Hello and welcome to the Holistic Pathway Podcast, unscripted conversations on mind, body, spirit, and entrepreneurship, a new video series podcast where we deep dive into the holistic integration of life and business. I am Tammy Coyne, your holistic alchemist, helping you change pain into possibilities and possibilities into purpose. Today's chat is with Todd Schaefer. Todd is the Chief of Operations at As You Wish Publishing, a family-owned business he co-founded with his wife, Kira, in 2017. Their company provides both solo and collaborative book publishing opportunities for aspiring authors. Todd and Kira have built two multi-six-figure businesses. In their former hypnotherapy clinic, they helped over 4,000 clients with personal development. Now they've published more than 70 books and hundreds of authors. Todd is dedicated to supporting holistic business owners in creating profitable and impactful businesses. He has written 4 books guiding holistic business owners, with his latest, Butts in Seats 2, Turn Your Holistic Side Hustle into a Successful Local Business, offering practical growth strategies for holistic and spiritual practitioners. I'm so excited to have Todd today, and I hope you will stay tuned and enjoy today's conversation. Well, hello, Todd. It's so good to have you today. I usually like to start out with kind of how I met our guests, and I don't even know if you know for sure how we met, but we actually met. It was New Year's Eve, 2015.
Really?
When you guys were still had your clinic up in the North Phoenix area. That is our first time to ever meet you and Kira. I'm pretty sure we may have crossed paths before, but I think that was the very first time. Do you remember that ceremony that you guys did there?
You know, I don't. I think Kira reminded me that we had met in person, but I don't. I'm so sorry. I don't remember that. And I'm
Well,
not one to forget.
you were kind of in the background, sort of. Kira was doing some sort of it was a New Year's Eve celebration, and
Okay.
we had it seems like we were maybe doing things we wanted to release, and there was a burning ceremony and some different things.
Yeah.
And I think you guys were getting ready actually to close up that
Mhm.
shop, or it was coming up close.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was the first time. And then um I'm trying to think of what came next. We did the Holistic Speakers Guild. I was
Uh-huh.
part of that.
Uh-huh.
And then let's see, I was one of your, I think maybe one of your first co-authors with the As You Wish Publishing. We did When I Rise, I Thrive. And then I have been on a couple of your book review teams. So
Yeah.
it's exciting that we've had all
Yeah.
these interactions, through the years, and I'm so happy to have you.
Thank you. And I know we've been online buddies for a long time, and I
Yeah.
know you've been in my books, or a couple of our books and such, and on my review teams. I appreciate that. And Kira reminded me, you're reminding me that we had met in person at one point. It was just so long ago. It's like 9 years ago.
I
But I
know.
know I've always felt a connection to you. And even though we've done different things, it's not every day you get to meet your online friends,
No.
but we've definitely been in contact, and it's really special that you got to be a part of our time, even during the old days at the clinic and such.
So exciting, I know. And I've had guests on from all over the world, and a lot I don't know that we will ever get an opportunity to meet. And I love the fact that we're in the same state. And sometimes that can feel like you're on the other side of the world, right? And
Yeah.
so just an opportunity to either meet in person, or to even just spend some time on Zoom sometimes is really great, because it's all like we're all just kind of ships passing in the night with all the work that we're doing out in the world.
True that. Yeah.
Well, and I love that with your butts and seats too, by the time this podcast episode comes out, you will officially be launched with your new book as it is as we're recording. We're getting ready for that launch, and I'm super excited. I've been reading it. Oh gosh, I'm more than halfway through. And I love everything that you've had in there. I think it's such an important book that you've written, which is why I've worked to get several people on your review team, because I'd read your previous book, Butts and Seats, the original one, and I thought, you know what? I think this is something especially new people or people who are trying to fill in gaps totally need this in their toolkit to kind of help them figure out where they may not be hitting the mark. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, I do. Yeah. Yeah, I'm so grateful that you're supportive of that. And yeah, you were involved in the first one, and you've been amazing in helping to reach out to get people on the review team who might be wanting to support it. And that's awesome. And as of this timing of this recording, I'm getting the review team together, starting to get people into that launch group. And then I'll be sending out the ARC to the review team probably within a week. And yeah, I'm super excited. I love it. And this book took a while to put together because it was compiled from so much information. And then it had a lot of, how do I say, it was reworked a number of times. If it was a big pile of clay that I had already had from other information from leftover from other things. And I had to work it and rework it, which took a lot longer to write a book this way compared to, I have an idea, let's make an outline. That's like the best way to do it. And then you work it and you flesh it out. This wasn't like that. I already had a pile of clay, but I knew I didn't want to throw it out. So I kept working it and reworking it. And like, okay, this still feels like a pile of clay. It needs to be more succinct. It needs to have more of a message. And then I kind of got spirit guided with it. And then, even though it took a long time, because you have to keep revising things once you realize which direction you're being led, right? So you
Yeah.
can't have it be disjointed. But then it kind of came together, but better and better. And then it turned into this laser beam focus thing and had a lot of good information that helped HBOs, I call them, holistic business owners / spiritual business owners, to own what they do and to deal with common challenges. I just framed it as how to move from a side business to a sole income business if they want to. And not everybody wants to do that, but there are some who do want to do that. And so I just stuffed as many tools in there from my experience, from me and Kira's experience, to help them achieve that if they want to, based on our experience.
I love that so much. And it's funny, I really enjoyed your metaphor of the clay, because when I started this holistic entrepreneurship journey was in 2014. I had just walked out on a 20-year federal career and no idea what I was going to happen. It happened simultaneously with a spiritual awakening. I was in a new marriage. We were supposed to be doing this together. And everything that we had attempted to pull together for our business, he left the marriage, which then left everything else. And then I had to take that clay and sort of just exactly what you described. It's like I had all these pieces that I didn't want to get rid of. I had to get rid of the name. I had to do this. I had to do that. And so it has taken all this time to just kind of get my bearings. And that's one of the things that I think is so important for people to understand. Most of us didn't come out of the gate as entrepreneurs. Like our spiritual journey or our holistic journey actually led us to that, because at least on my case, you start seeing where people are having trouble or running into obstacles or struggling, whatever word you want to use. And you're now at a point to hopefully help them not do some of the mistakes that you made. And
Mhm.
which brings me to, I'm wondering, like, how did your holistic journey begin? Like yours in the very beginning, was it due to health? Was it a spiritual awakening? Was like what happened? Because I know there was a long journey to get from where
Mhm.
you started to here.
Mhm. You mean like for me and Kira with the clinic stuff, or do you mean me by myself?
Whichever.
Um, okay. Well, like like before I met Kira, I,
Yeah.
I took an interest in like spiritual books, new age books. I think my dad was, initially it was started with ways to cope with anxiety. Um,
Okay.
um, so that was it. And then he was recommending that I read things like Joseph Murphy and Sanea Roman and just all these different newbies or people who were already established in the field. Um, Marianne Williamson, I thankfully got exposed to her at a very early age, more than 25 years ago. And then so I got onto that. That became interesting, and I really embraced it, and I got a lot of strength from it. And then I somehow in there I got into channeling, and so I really and I had a mentor who was an expert channeler of 20 years, and he kind of mentored me. So I did that. I don't want to say professionally because I had a job, but I did it as a side gig for the public for a number of years. I did some public channeling way back in the day, and I did a bunch of written channeling. I almost published it into a book because I had so much content, and my ego really attached to it. It was good for me, but it was also, in retrospect, a spiritual bypass because I used it as an identity to circumvent things that I um, hadn't known yet how to deal with or how to cope with or how to get around, right?
Mhm.
Emotionally speaking. I
Yeah.
didn't even have awareness. Some issues don't even come into our awareness until our 30s and 40s, So, and this was my early 20s. So, but that's, it's all innocent, nothing wrong with it. I was trying to help people, and help myself. But I also part of me knew that I was getting attention out of it. So fast forward, I don't know how many years, let's say 11 years. Um, then I eventually stopped doing it because I realized I needed to grow uh, in ways that I didn't feel were being inhibited or I just felt like I needed to stop that and do something else.
Mhm.
So I stopped it and or phased it out as it were. And I just started doing more Course in Miracles stuff. Because I did find Course in Miracles about 2006, and I was learning about that. Um, and I think maybe that took root in me more. And when you get to finding what the truth is for you, whatever you resonate with, text wise, truth. I mean, Marianne Williamson has introduced me to Course before I got the Course book.
Yeah.
Uh, and I think that kind of started me on a path, a little bit different trajectory. So that had an impact on me. Nothing's ever lost. I just decided to not do the channeling as much, and I started doing this other stuff, and I started writing a lot more. I got way more into that. I ended up publishing my first book in 2011, and then in 2006, I had met Kira. Okay, I'll go really fast here. And then 2011, we moved to Phoenix. We started the clinic, the hypnotherapy self-help clinic or personal development clinic from 2011 to 2015. Then we worked with thousands of people on their personal development, about 2,000 people, one-on-one each. That was fun. And then 2015 to 2018, she did different things like the Speakers Guild. I took a job for a while just for a break. And then in 2018-ish, like once she got the publishing business started, then we were making enough to where I could come home and help. And then from 2018 to now, we've been doing the publishing thing. So that's the timeline for you.
I love it. And what I love about this is because as we talked, I really love to envision this conversation as us just being friends, out having lunch, just chatting about our journeys, and then people getting to listen in on that because everybody's at a different journey. And the challenge with when you hear the word holistic, it means a lot of different things to a lot of people. And I've shared with people who are interested in being guests on the podcast, I said, we've literally talked everything from childhood trauma to intergalactic beings, because I mean, you just don't know what somebody's journey has led them through. And I love that you started out with anxiety, not that that's how you started out, but that was one of the things that caused you to start looking for maybe alternatives. It was my own health that started to tank, that connected me to the mind body connection. That's how things started to evolve for me. And and I've said this on the program before, my signature program is called Unboxing Your Authentic Self, because to me, that's literally, we've been put into these boxes, either by society, by our family, from school, from work, from church, from whatever, our own thinking. And so there comes a time where you might start feeling anxiety, or you might feel depressed, or you might feel this desire that there's something more. And to me, that's when your higher self or your true self is starting to knock on the door and say, hey, what about me? And I think I have such a challenge with some of the people out there and the way that they coach and they teach, because it often leads you into believing that doing it their way is going to make everything better for you. And I see it more of an exploratory place of saying, let's look at everything you've gone through in your life, and let's see what we can do to clear out what doesn't work and what actually is that part of you that's attempting to emerge. And so, as you've described so well, you've gotten all this experience, but what really started calling to you was being a writer. And what I also love is that you and I, one of the one of the qualities that I think you and I have that a lot of others may not have, is we're a bit more analytical than a lot of the other holistic and spiritual people. And
Yeah.
I think I've gone through the same thing. I've went and taken jobs. I've tried this, I've tried that. And I realized I was still putting myself in boxes, when the analytical part of me is very much a part of who I am. My number one strength in the Strengths Finder test is literally strategic thinking. So it's kind of like, all right, that has to fit somewhere. So maybe it's that I am here to support and serve those people who are on these same kind of paths, and maybe I can support them in ways that maybe is not their gift. And how do we all support each other,
Yep. I totally agree with everything you just said. And I feel similar. I feel the same way in terms of my books that I write. That's my community service, to help to just share what I've learned,
Yeah.
just what I've learned, to help other people who might be wanting to do the same thing, period. So yeah, and it's fun and it's enjoyable and it's a way to give back. And it sounds like from what you do, it's similar, and you're finding ways to give back based on the experiences you've had. And we're both analytical, so we can put a fine point on things. And I think that a lot of people who are younger than us, um, tend to, well, they just haven't had as much time in the workforce for one.
Yeah.
And I think on the whole, the younger you get, this is just my feeling, my intuition, the less likely the healer slash spiritual slash holistic crowd, uh, like the younger you are, I feel like the less likely they are to have taken more traditional roles in the workforce, perhaps, or even less traditional jobs, even in
Yeah.
terms of not getting into something so constrictive, maybe more so things that, where you can make money without having to invest so much into conformity, for example.
Yeah.
That's kind of the trend that I see. I don't know if it's true across the board, but if it is true, it does make sense, because I feel like younger people, even people 5, 10 years younger than me, I feel like have even less tolerance for conformity, and would prefer to do things their way, which is admirable. But it also compels them to make things work their way, So that's why I think that people who have learned what we have learned can offer opportunities for them to do it their way as a result of the paths we have taken. It's kind of a way of passing the torch in a way,
Yeah.
and just leveraging what we've learned, to help the tribe, to help our people out. And I think that's as great as we can do, as long as we're passionate about it.
Totally. I get really pissed off when people talk about other generations as if they don't have any value.
Oh,
Like they make fun of millennials, or they make fun of the boomers, or this and that. And what I have witnessed is that each group, I like to say, comes with different software, and
yeah.
we all have
Yeah.
such different valuable skills. And if we can help with bridge the lines of communication with each group,
Mhm.
there's so much value. As an example, the younger crowd that you're mentioning, one bonus that they have is not having to unlearn some of that stuff that
Yeah.
we had to unlearn
Right.
because of these different things. And yet, because of what we learned, we also learned how to structure things. We learned how to strategize things. And so sometimes we've got skill sets they need, they've got skill sets we need. And I've said this several times on this path, I am really looking for people who aren't in the competition mindset. They're in the collaboration mindset. And I see us all as lighthouses who sometimes forget our own light and our own value because we're busy shining the light, right? And so and that's what I've been trying to do. Like, how do I start to bring us together so that we're shining a light for each other when we all step back into that human experience and forget who we are and forget what our purpose is, especially if we're on a path that doesn't feel quite right, or we're challenged financially, or whatever is going on. The dark night of the soul is something every one of us have gone through, and some of us multiple times. So,
Absolutely.
where it's like all of a sudden it feels like your whole life just, broke open and now you're starting over again.
Yep.
It's a very curious thing that I didn't experience prior to my awakening. Or maybe I did because my life was always a hot mess in some form or fashion, but I wasn't as aware of what was happening.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that all those things were actually happening as a strengthening for
For
me.
you, not to you.
Yeah, exactly. Love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what got you guys excited about moving into publishing?
Oh, well, I mean, that's part of Kira's story. It's actually on our website, in the About Us section, asyouwishpublishing.com. She tells the story where a friend of hers died, and she had right before that had been encouraging her about putting together a publishing book, or it happened before, or maybe even after she died. Like she got some communication from her about bringing people together to collaborate in a book. And I think I think it might have been the Happy Thoughts Playbook, if I'm not mistaken. I think that was the first one.
That sounds right, because I think I think she was in the Holistic Speakers Guild with
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
I'm thinking.
Yeah. So it started with that. It started with that, and then expanded from there in terms of doing another one and another one. And, you know, the passion was there, the guidance was there, and it just started with these collaboration books. And then after, you know, she got some more and more competency and confidence with that. And then we started expanding it to solo books for authors who wanted to do that. And the rest is kind of history. It started with that impetus of that friend's passing, and the passion kind of grew from there. And Kira's always considered herself a sort of a writer, even though she hadn't published anything her own. I haven't identified as a writer, but I am a writer. I mean, because I've been journaling since I was a kid for myself as a coping mechanism for anxiety. Like that was recommended, and it really helped for me. And for people who are analytical, it serves as a great analytical vehicle, and you end up calming yourself down. So it's effective. It's for anyone. And then, you know, I would write little short stories. And while I never really pursued it as a career, I've just always enjoyed it as a thing. So, I mean, yeah, so it kind of worked out well that I like writing. I'm good at copy editing, and it just kind of works. It falls into our skill sets, and here we are, basically.
Well, I love that because, you know, just with what we've talked about, you really just demonstrated kind of how those things start to unfold. And sometimes it's not even a thought that you have that you're going, it comes from guidance based on things that come to you. And I love that. Part of what I'm getting ready to actually launch a new community on Sunday, as a matter of fact. Hopefully we'll be fully launched by the time this comes out. But one of the things that I started realizing that I'm really good at is I am really good at being a bridge. I'm really good at what I call being a concierge, you know, and I'm like,
Yeah.
well, you know, because I know that I've sent a couple of different people as I was working with someone one-on-one, and maybe they expressed interest in writing a book, and I would kind of send them your way. And if you guys weren't a good fit for whatever reason, maybe the type of book they were doing, one friend or one client wanted to do a children's book, and you guys weren't doing that. But from that, she was able to connect with other people, and she's now written and published her book, which is amazing. And then I sent another friend your way who was not a client, but we met in a business group, and that worked out for her. And she worked with you guys and launched your book, or her book. So, you know, one question I have that I think other people might be interested in is, what is the benefit of doing your own book, whether that be, say, you guys, I know, have expanded to a lot of different areas. Let's say someone wanted to work with you to do their own book, either as a collaboration or as a solo effort. Are there different benefits to doing one or the other?
Totally. Yeah. And just for the record, we do offer children's books now, if anybody wants to do that.
Awesome.
Um, yeah, well, collaborative books, like in terms of like if you wanted to host a collaborative book, we have done that before. We don't put it out there as an offering just because the draw isn't as big for that. And like we'll do a virtual meeting that tells them what is all involved. And once they realize what's all involved, they usually don't want to do it because they have to corral all the people and manage all the deadlines themselves.
Oh, no, no, no. I'm asking to be part of one of those
Okay,
books.
that's
For
okay, great.
instance, yeah,
That's
yeah,
better.
because I've been part of two, one with you
Yeah.
guys and once with someone else. And so I know what my reasonings were, but I'm just wondering
Okay.
from a publisher standpoint, what would be the benefit for someone to be in one of those books?
Absolutely. Gotcha.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I misunderstood.
No, no,
Yes.
fine.
So those are our primary offerings: collaboration book and solo books. Majority of people we've published have started out with a collaboration book. And we have different themed books. Like currently we have one open for registration called Synchronicity. So, it's a general enough title so that if someone can resonate with that, if you've had a story and you want to express yourself. Our mission is giving writers a voice, essentially. So these collaboration books really serve to give people a chance to express themselves. And we don't look for writers or anything. This is for anyone. Everybody has a story in them. So giving people a space to write, and most of these people, again, haven't written anything before. Brings a lot of confidence, and sometimes trepidation, of course, but they get to do it and write a chapter in a book with other authors, other writers, many of whom have been in other books. So they get to brush up and build confidence with people who have done it before. Along with new people, they can bring their friends, they can bring their grandma, their mom, and kids with them and do it and write it together. We've had one lady who's done it with her daughter for almost every book we've ever done. They've been in more than 10 books together, depending on the theme, right? Because we have a different themed books, generally about 4 a year at this point. And they just get confidence, and they get to see their name in print. They get to share the print copies with their friends and family. And I think that even personally, I love it because it inspires them, the people who are reading it in their circles. I always say, and when Kira and I do our recordings and streams and things, I always say the best thing about this is that we need more people who are stepping up just in their own tribes, right? However you're drawn to make a difference is good, but if you want to do some self-expression and share a theme chapter in a book, then it serves as an example for those people, right? It's great to have these towering examples like Marianne Williamson, but I think it's even more powerful when we step up ourselves with the courage, because a lot of people don't have that. And then people in your little tribe, your family and community get to see that and like, oh wow, damn, look at them, they did that. And it may inspire them to write themselves. It may inspire them to do something else that they've been putting off for themselves. So it's that inspiration, I think, that serves the greatest purpose. It just sparks inspiration. It's such an easy way for people to kind of redefine themselves or who they thought they were or what they thought they could do. And I think that's the benefit of doing a collaboration book, which ties in directly with our mission, which is to give people a voice. So that's what we attract is people who are wanting to express themselves, and they have a ton of fun with our launch teams and our launch groups that happen with every book. And we make it a really comfortable, seamless experience for them. So that's how the collaboration books work. In terms of solo books, that's a smaller crowd, right? Because not everybody comes out of the gate with a solo book. Although we are attracting a lot more people because our brand is getting more exposure over the years. We are attracting more people who are actually writers who have a book ready to go and they want to publish with us because we offer things that other publishers don't. We're very hands-on. We're very communicative, personable, accessible. Authors get to keep 100% copyright. They get 100% royalties go right to them. It doesn't go through us or anything like that. So if they ever want to republish or work with a bigger publisher down the road or just make products from their own books or classes and using the solo book as a credibility builder and to name one of the reasons why somebody would want to do this, they have the option to do that. So they're professionally self-publishing with us, and that affords them all these abilities to do whatever they want with their book. So to succinctly answer, why would someone want to do a solo book? Well, to get exposure, especially as an HBO or a spiritual business owner, we always recommend doing that. And our blog is filled with blog posts about why people should do it and what the benefits are. The credibility that you have once you've published a book that is related to what you do, what your jam is. Maybe it's Reiki, or maybe it's hypnotherapy, or being a spiritual business owner. Whatever it is fine. But then you have that in your lobby, or you have that available to your clients. It could serve as homework. It's an instant, like I said, it's an instant credibility builder, and it's a platform through which you can offer other classes and products and things like that. So the people who have come to us, HBOs in particular, and not everybody is a holistic business owner who publishes a solo book, which is totally fine. But for those people alone, they get a huge value, a huge boost to their business, because having a published book can really set you apart in terms of being someone who has owned what they do. And it really instills a lot of confidence to clients. So
I
yeah.
love all of that. And I wanted to share a little bit about my own experience, because I think that's important. So many of us have lived certain kind of lives. My life is just full of trauma and abuse and loss. And so many times throughout my life, people said, "Oh my God, you need to write a book." Like just hearing 1 hour of one of my days, and people are like, "Oh my," and I'm like, "Yeah, well, sometimes that can be super, super overwhelming." Well, when I went through spiritual awakening in 2014, I received some very specific messages, and it was that I was here to be an internationally known speaker, author, master teacher, and healer. And I was here to empower, motivate, inspire, and transform the lives of others using the stories of my life. And I remember getting that message, and I said, "Do what?" I'm a girl from Oklahoma, first of all. Who in the world do I know internationally? And I couldn't even imagine that I would ever be an author. So I bring this up because the very first book that I collaborated on, which was not with you guys, but it was someone who was actually who lives here in Arizona, or did, and was from India. So immediately there, that international connection came. I had no idea how to write. The book was called When You're Done Expecting, and I was, I don't
Nice.
know, 50 years old at that point. And I thought, it was a book written by women for women, about the motherhood journey. And I shared a story with that. And it was easy because I didn't have a lot to write. And it was a way for me to sort of get it out there, get it in the book, right? And then that was exciting. And then I did something similar with you guys with When I Rise, I Thrive. And what was amazing is it ignited the ability or the belief in myself that, oh, look at that. I can do, like, it's in print now, like it's really in print. And I became an Amazon author now. So you can see that I have that page. And that does kind of give you street cred, right?
Yeah.
Because I remember a friend, I make posts all the time, and a friend one day saw an ad that I had in Natural Awakenings magazine, and she sends me a text message, circles my ad, and says, "Oh my God, look what I found." And I was like, "Well, I posted that." "Yeah, yeah, but I found this in the book." And I was like, "Okay." So it was literally the same thing that I posted, but because she found it in this magazine, somehow that made me seem more credible, I
Mm-hmm.
guess.
More
And
standard.
so that's the thing. I think there are so many people out there with amazing gifts and amazing services. And sometimes someone having the ability to see that you're an author or that you've collaborated on a book now sort of like elevates what you're doing a little bit more and
Sure.
perhaps brings you in some business. Now, it may not, but it may lend to the trust factor of what you're doing. Also, I'm very big on using discernment. Just because someone has a book does not instantly give them, does not mean they're the best person for you. So do your due
Due
diligence,
diligence.
listen to your guidance on that. But I think it's an amazing way to
Yeah.
build that confidence and to build your credibility as a professional or even as someone who's just lived through the human experience and has a story that you need to tell.
I love it. Two things I want to comment. One, a lot of us, okay, one is on trauma and one is on the author journey, just so I don't forget. The first thing is I love that because a lot of people in our holistic community have come from, a lot of people drawn to the holistic arts have trauma, and the wound is often the initiation,
Yeah.
and then they kind of look for alternative methods that don't pigeonhole them into only doing something a certain way, because I mean, traditional is great, but also it can be limiting in some regards. Like an interview we just did, you go to even a well-meaning surgeon, all their training is gonna tell you that they want to do surgery, right? You go to a psychiatrist, they're going to want to prescribe drugs. So I mean, nothing wrong with that, and it's necessary in the right contexts, but it's
Right.
also not holistic. I might say go to a naturopath first and try as much as possible to look at the whole picture before, is the best phrase, giving your power over to someone else's authority. I would Am I getting on thin ice here? I don't think so. Um, I would use it with discernment, right? Explore options, but don't automatically just surrender what's best for you, kind of thing.
Percent.
You use discernment. You talked about it with authorship and
Yeah.
writing books. Use it also with just any kind of
Everything.
service out there, right? Don't
Yep.
don't just roll over and just do whatever they tell you to do. No, consider it adding to your knowledge base, right? Especially before we get into like prescriptive drugs and things like that. But I'm going way out of my lane, so I'm going to shut up in that regard. I'm not here to make any political statements about, you know, doctors and things like that. Do what you need to do. I'm
Yeah.
not a licensed doctor or a therapist or anything like that. I'm just saying, all I'm saying is just uh, use your discernment, use your due diligence, and explore different options. That's all I'm saying. Um, don't just go to one person and they tell you it's this way and it's only going to be this way, and then you say okay, and then your beliefs are kind of at the mercy of whatever that one person tells you. And I think that's when things get a little dicey. But yes, appropriate in any circumstance, any of those avenues, traditional or non-traditional, can be extremely helpful and appropriate. Um, didn't mean to go down that rabbit hole, uh, but maybe somebody needed to hear that.
It's okay. I've got
Um,
stuff to add to it. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go
but
ahead.
we come from trauma, a lot of us, and the wound is the initiation, and so we start exploring ways to do it, to deal with it, and then we explore our modalities. Channeling helped me to sort things out, in my own way, and it helped reduce anxiety. Hypnotherapy was a huge help. I completely misunderstood what anxiety even is. If I were to go, here's a tie-in. If I were to go strictly the traditional route, I may have had a whole different idea about what it took to manage that. And it may or may not have ended up with medication.
Mhm.
Could that have been the right thing? Maybe, maybe. For me, it probably would not have been the right thing, because I just realized that anxiety is a catch-all. And it's just the cup being a little too full, really. And there's lots of ways to mediate that, to remedy that, naturally, actually. So, any rate, I wanted to say I don't know why this came out. I wasn't even intending to say that
All right,
stuff. But
spirit-directed conversations.
it's a disclaimer. I'm not giving medical advice. I'm not giving any kind of advice. That is not my jam. I just want people to use discernment with utilizing their power when it comes to taking advice. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
So yes, I think if you hadn't experienced trauma, if I hadn't, if other people hadn't, it may have affected the path that we took, and some of the modalities that we experience that help us to heal ourselves. And then a lot of times what happens is, in my experience, these people feel drawn to extend that gift to others. And then it becomes a holistic modality that they're very much in tune with, that they can really walk people through and help them with similar issues, which makes them a really great expert on that modality because they have intimate experience with it themselves. So that's one thing. The second thing was authorship journey. Total credibility builder. Again, use discernment when reading things. Tammy, the tie-in is use discernment no matter who you're listening to, because I've read books from people that were high quality and others that were not so much quality. So a book some people are just working out their issues with their books. And hell, my first book was that, although I tried to make it as positive and non-toxic as possible, and what can I offer to other people? But a lot of people do start with their books with memoirs and things like that. It's very appropriate. They're actually trying to process their stuff. And there's nothing wrong with that. I say, if you want my advice, try to keep it positive so it's interesting to read and don't throw people under the bus, kind of thing. But definitely share what's going on in your journey or what happened, and then maybe give people a little something extra in terms of how can you learn from my journey, instead of it just being only story, it can also be, and here's what I learned. And that can be really helpful to people. And then finally, in terms of the authorship journey, it all starts after the book is published. Just getting it published is one thing, and that's a great confidence builder. The second thing is what happens after that. And that's what we always say. It's not over, it's beginning. It's beginning. That's how you stand behind or stand in front of your book, in front of your book, how you stand with your book as you take your next steps. That is really what solidifies the credibility. It's not just that you wrote one, which is great. It's that you are also taking steps forward with it. I'm talking about it. I'm offering classes if you're an HBO. I'm supporting, I'm building my brand with it. I'm doing things with it. And that really shows not just your credibility from having written a book, but that you are owning your book and you're owning the steps forward that you're taking. And that's a big differentiator, is that you're willing to stand by it and take steps and leverage it to help your brand and to help you help other people. I'll
I
stop
love
there.
it so much. In thinking about all of that, three words came to me, which I think are really important for what we're talking about. One is authenticity. What does that mean? Which is part of, again, what I'm doing with people is to help them figure out what does that mean for them. Two is integrity, which I think is really important to recognize, people that you're working with or yourself, are you in integrity?
Yeah.
And then the other is discernment, and we've talked about that. In my own journey, there was so much so much severe things going on, and I was in traditional counseling for almost 30 years. I'll be 60 in January. So almost 30 years of my life, I was in traditional counseling. It started on an emergency outpatient situation. And when I was 16 years old, thankfully, a VOTEC teacher intervened in what was going on and was able to get me into a counselor. Anyhow, and then about 14 years, they had wanted to put me on medication, and I was not someone who was even interested in like taking a Tylenol, right? And I really didn't do that. I tried not to do that, even though I was not considering myself holistic or anything else at that time. And it took about 14 years and till I consented to medication. At that point, there was another trauma that happened, which was the Oklahoma City bombing, and I lost some of my friends in that. So
Wow.
that was another thing. And at that point, on top of everything else, my body started to just like, I just shook all the time. And so
Mm.
medication at that time was necessary for me. And the challenge was, in those days, well, a couple of things. One, I didn't know there were any alternatives. I didn't know anything about anything different. And two, in the situation that I was in, I think the route that I went was probably absolutely necessary for where I was at that time. I've said many times the person I was then would not have been ready for the work that I do now.
Yeah.
It would be too advanced for the place that they are, for the place that I was. So I think that's important to know who you are, know what you need. I have now gone from someone who was recognized by voice and by face at the pharmacy because I had a spreadsheet of diagnoses, both for mental health and also physical health, to someone who doesn't take any medications, nothing over the counter, nothing. So I went from here to here again, my own choice, my own journey. But that's what I think is so important for people to recognize. Where am I? And part of my work with people has been to help them sort of explore that. If there's someone who says, that's not the path that I want, awesome. That's how we want you to get to where you feel so confident in your own choices that you know this is right for you or this isn't. Sometimes people, they're not at that place yet and they need help. So that's important, where maybe you're relying on a doctor or a counselor or a coach or a teacher or a mentor or whatever until you've got that confidence. I think what we're saying here for people is to be sure you're with someone, one where you feel safe, you feel like you're being heard, you feel like you can express your thoughts and not be squashed. And if you're saying, I appreciate what you're telling me, but that's not working for me, that you've got the voice to be able to say that. And also, I've said to people many, many times, my role in their life is not to get them dependent upon me, but to get them dependent upon themselves and connection to spirit, whatever that means for them, or just themselves if they come from an atheist or agnostic place. It's literally about uncovering what it is that they need for their journey. And that's why I said back to integrity, authenticity,
Yeah.
and discernment
Yeah.
based on what you need for your path.
Love it. So I love it. You said everything I said with way fewer words, and and
That's shocking.
and you added it, and you added a lot more. I love it. I love it. And the last 20 years, you said, it was all appropriate, and I completely agree. If it feels right, then it is right, really, and we have to be honest with ourselves about, is it really feel right from my feelings, or am I just reacting emotionally,
Yeah.
Um, but I love that you said all of that. A lot of holistic modalities didn't even exist 20 years ago.
Mhm.
There are new ones being created all the time. Some people create their own,
Yeah.
like practitioners, not schools and institutions. Um, but so, there were fewer options for you and me back then, and whatever felt appropriate was appropriate, and like you said, in your case, it was necessary to do what you needed to do. So I mean, I love that, in one regard, we're zeroing in on how it's important for people to discover their own voice and practice discernment. It's almost like a theme occurring
Yeah.
here. And I love that you so eloquently said that you're helping people to find your own voice. And hell, that's the point of a medication, as a support as you're moving through it, not something that you stay on forever, right? As a teacher, you're helping people to navigate and then ensuring that they don't become dependent upon you. And I think that's the mark of a wonderful spiritual teacher, not to create any kind of dependency. Eckhart Tolle says the same thing. I'm not pointing you towards me. I'm pointing you towards the truth. I'm pointing you towards your beingness, right? So that would be the integrity part of it, I think, is leading people to themselves, the authenticity, leading people to themselves. And you're a waypoint on that journey. And I really love that you're help people to explore for themselves. That's the voice of wisdom right there. That's a wise teacher who helps people to explore themselves, as opposed to convincing them to just join your way of thinking. So the authenticity and integrity, I think those words get thrown around a lot in our community. And I think they're all well-meaning when they're stated, but I don't know if they're really well vetted. And I think a conversation like this, where we're covering these different points, really helps to illustrate what those words can mean in terms of integrity and authenticity. So anything that we do that helps people to give the power, to empower them to be grander versions of themselves without feeling like they're being oppressed or inundated, or that they're or forced into victimhood in some subversive way, we're doing a really great service in that type of empowerment.
100%. One of the things is we had talked about several things. Well, I actually have a 60-hour master's in counseling. I was on track to do an LPC and opted out of supervision. I did my internships, but then opted out of supervision and went the route of the holistic path. And part of the reason why I say that is what I share with people is simply kind of through stories of my life, things that I've been through, things that I've made some really bad mistakes with, but they were all learning. I mean, in one of my early counselors, they really wanted to film our sessions because I was straight up a hot mess, but they wanted to do it for training purposes because I was not someone that you really could get through to. And I could not get out of the past. I literally could not get out of the past. And so what I think is so important for people to understand is how valuable they are and how much their voice matters. And sometimes we don't even know how to get our voice. I used to say my radar was broken for a long time, so I didn't even trust myself. So I had to trust other people to help me navigate my way until I found my own way. And that's why I think it's so important to me that other people feel safe
Yeah.
to be able to say, I don't agree with you. This is what feels right for me. And cool, awesome. Let's talk more about that. So I cannot believe, just as always, I'm always so shocked when I check and I see that our time is like coming to an end. I've loved our conversation. If we were going to wrap up, do you have any final thoughts about this or anything else that's coming up for you that you want to share?
Oh boy. Yeah, it's really fun when it's spirit led. It goes in different directions, but it's really interesting to see the themes that emerge. Um, well, I would just say I think the proof's in the pudding in terms of the themes. I might just reiterate and say exercise your own voice. If you're working with clients through your modalities, do what Tammy does and help them to develop their own discernment of things, help them to develop their own voice, help them to free themselves from the past without creating any dependency on you. I think that's the mark of a great healer. a great teacher, is when you can do that. And those types of things come after a healer has sort of gotten to a pretty stable place with processing their own issues, right? It can be pretty common in the early days to work on them ourselves while we're working with other clients, either actively or passively. But yeah, I would wrap it up by saying, think of integrity and authenticity as always something to remain vigilant for, and just remember to do right by your clients and just keep that at the forefront of your thinking. And I think you're always going to be in a really good place of service with those types of ideals guiding you.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you, Todd. And for those watching, thank you so much for watching another exciting episode of the Holistic Pathway podcast, where we bring these conversations to you every Saturday. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye-bye.